Hi everyone, it's Amy here from the blog I Think Therefore I Teach. Welcome to your next pop of philosophy. This is 5 minutes with Plato. I have to admit, this is now my second attempt. My first attempt, I didn't even get through the analogy of the cave, so let's see if I can do it slightly better this time. I will set my timer ready. I think it's because I like Plato so much, so I talk about him for a long time. But 5 minutes is the point of this video, so let's see if I can do it. Right, here we go. So, before we start Plato, you need to understand that there's two ways of gaining knowledge: empiricism and rationalism. Empiricism means you use your senses to gain knowledge, just like a scientist uses observation and a hypothesis. This is where Aristotle falls. Plato, on the other hand, is a rationalist. He believes in not using senses. Senses delude you, can be wrong, and instead you should go straight to your reason. Reason alone is how you will gain knowledge. And so Plato's argument is a priori, prior to senses, whereas Aristotle is a posteriori, post senses. So one uses reason alone, one uses senses. And so Plato's argument, he believes in the logic of opposites. So he looked to Heraclitus for inspiration, another Greek philosopher. Heraclitus posed the question, can you step in the same river twice? And obviously the answer is no. Rivers are constantly flowing and changing, streams are constantly flowing and changing, and so you can never step in the same river twice. And so this idea of change is what inspired Plato to say, if this world constantly changes, there must be an opposite. Logically, there has to be an opposite, and therefore there is another world that does not change. This is the world of forms. Forms are perfect expressions of everything we experience in this world. So, for example, take beauty. There is a perfect form of beauty. What we get in our world are imperfect expressions of this that constantly change, die off, differ over time and culture, but we always have a concept of beauty. That's because of this one form in the world of forms that we have. And so what we get are shadows from this form of beauty or from any other form. So there's forms of justice and love and just everything. Everything we experience, there is a form of it. That form never ever changes. It's perfect, unchanging, the one and only. And so things we experience in our world might participate more in that form, therefore are more beautiful, more loyal, more loving, more just, etc. Some things are less because they experience less of that shadow or impression from the perfect form that you have. They are particulars though. Everything we experience in this world is a particular example of beauty, a particular example of justice, but they all come from that one form that sends shadows down to us. But we don't believe there's another world because of our ignorance. This ignorance or icasia is because we believe our senses, our smell, our sight, our touch, our hearing, we believe what our senses tell us, and Plato says no, do not believe your senses, go straight to your reason. And so for Plato, because there's so many forms in the world of forms, there has to be an ultimate overall form of forms. This is the form of good. Why? Everything has goodness in it. Everything. You can't have justice or love or beauty without goodness. And so this form of the good goes down to the other forms, and then we finally get this imperfect impressions. A bit like an echo. You stand at the front of a cave, you call into a cave. Your voice is the form. The echoes are the impressions that we get, and obviously it alters, doesn't it? An echo alters. That's like the imitations that we get in our world. And so everything we experience is an imitation. It imitates or copies the form to a greater or lesser extent. And so to explain his ideas more, he created the analogy of the cave. The analogy of the cave, an analogy is a comparison of similar things. So he's comparing our world, what we think is real but isn't, and the world of forms, to being in a cave and outside a cave. So there are 3 prisoners in this cave. They've been there for their whole lives and they're facing a wall. Behind behind them is a walkway, behind that is a fire, and people walk on the walkway carrying all sorts of things, casting shadows against that wall, talking with each other and things like that. And these prisoners believe the shadows are real. They believe that those shadows are talking, and that's their reality. They believe the shadows are real. One day one of the prisoners is released and he makes a painful journey out of the cave and realises the cave isn't real. There is a world outside the cave, and he's blinded by the sun. The sun illuminates the world, illuminates all of the forms, and he gains true knowledge or episteme. So the journey out of the cave is like epistemology, the study of knowledge, that painful gaining of knowledge, turning off your senses, that breaking of senses in order to go to the outside world, the world of forms that's illuminated by the sun or the form of the good. The prisoner runs back into the cave to tell the other prisoners what he's experienced. Oh, I'm nearly there, I've done better this time. Dismiss. I'll just finish that off. And so he runs back into the cave to try and tell everybody what he's experienced, and he stumbles and falls, and they believe he's gone blind, and they say, "Do not release us. We do not want to know what you've experienced." And that's very similar to Socrates. Socrates, who tried to explain to people truth, and in fact he was killed. He had to drink the hemlock because they didn't believe him. Not too bad. The final thing that I think does need to be added is about how we gain this knowledge. So Plato believed that you gain this knowledge when you die. So you go to the world of forms, you experience the world of forms when you die, and you come back through reincarnation or metempsychosis into this world. And so we all have knowledge of the world of forms inside us, but through education, through existence with others, we stop listening to our reason and start watching again to our senses. And so because of that, we block away our soul, we block away the memory of the forms, and our souls inside us say, "No, listen to me, I know the truth." And we ignore our souls, we ignore that truth, we ignore that knowledge. So it's about listening to your souls. And so by remembering the forms back in this world, that's known as anamnesis, the remembering the forms back in this physical world. Plato believed that the only people that should rule the country, the politicians, are the ones that have that true knowledge and the knowledge of the forms rather than the illusions that we believe. I think that was more 6 minutes, folks, so I do apologise for the little run over there. I thought I could do Plato really easily in 5 minutes. Obviously not. So hopefully you still found this really useful. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a video, because I'm going to start doing a few more uploads and get into that routine again. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching. Bye for now, everyone.